दिलों में प्यार की खुशबू तो होठों पर दुआ रखना दिलों में प्यार की खुशबू तो होठों पर दुआ रखना ईमान में वक्त से एक रिश्ता इश्क को वफा रखना ईमान में वक्त से एक रिश्ता
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Friday's Sermon for Kids, where, as you already know, you sitting at home are given just a little bit from the ocean of guidance present in beloved Huzur's Friday's Sermon. Nobody here does this alone. Every week are helping me two amazing panelists. This week to my right is Monis, to his right is Tashif. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam, Rabbi Sahib.
Jazakumullah ahsan al-jaza for being here, guys. So, dear audience, the victories against the Persians continued, and we discovered brand new stories this week as well.
Fateh Arab Sayyidina Khalid bin Walid ने इराक़ को 1 साल 2 माह में फ़तह कर लिया। इसके साथ उनके साथ कुल 10,000 फ़ौजी थे और तकरीबन इतने ही फ़ौजी दीगर इस्लामी सलारों के साथ थे। इतनी कलील फ़ौज ने इस मुद्दत में जो शानदार कारनामे अंजाम दिए वो तारीख़ में बेमिसाल हैं। हज़रत खालिद बिन वलीद हर मार्के में शामिल हुए, उन्हें किसी मौके पर भी शिकस्त का मुँह न देखना पड़ा। दरबार रसालत सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम से आपको सैफुल्लाह यानी अल्लाह की तलवार का ख़िताब मिला था और आपने इस ख़िताब का हक़ अदा कर दिया।
So, how the Muslims ended up taking over the whole of Iraq is what we're going to discover today. But before that, I come to my panelists who already know what's coming their way. Were you guys able to cover this week's Friday sermon?
Alhamdulillah, saw it once.
Same here, got to go through it once as well.
Wonderful, brothers. So, you know what comes after that? Your newly learned points.
The new thing I learned from beloved Huzur's Friday sermon was that Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu broke 8 swords. So, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him the title of Saifullah, meaning the sword of Allah.
I learned that when Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu won the battle in Heerah, the people sent him gifts, which he sent to Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and they accepted them as jizya.
MashaAllah, very nicely retained points, brothers. So we are going to move forward, but not without hearing all of your newly learned points, dear audience. For that, we go straight to Kids Take.
In this week's Friday sermon, I learned that Hazrat Khalid bin Walid was also called Saifullah.
Heerah Huzoor told us about the battles fought under Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu ta'ala anhu.
Heerah Huzoor told us that Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu ta'ala anhu conquered Iraq.
This week I learned that the Persian ruler of Heerah tried to block Muslim ships from getting through from attacking them.
Hazrat Khalid bin Walid anhu became a brave warrior and conquered Iraq.
In this week's Friday sermon, I learned that the victory at Heerah was extremely important.
In this week's Friday sermon, I learned that when Hazrat Khalid bin Walid anhu gained victory in a battle, people sent him gifts to congratulate him, but he gave the gifts to Hazrat Abu Bakr anhu, who accepted them as jizya.
Jazakumullah ahsan al-jaza. That was our amazing Kids Take presenters. We want to hear your newly learned points, so make sure you get to us next week if you forgot to send in your video. Now let's get to our discussion.
I know the first battle Huzur talked about was of Heerah, where the majority were Arab Christian.
Yeah, but their governor, Hakim, was also a Persian leader, and so they were close to the Persian Empire.
Yes, absolutely. And the people of Heerah, Huzur mentioned in the Friday sermon, had known that Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu was coming their way after having won those other battles before that Huzur discussed in previous week's sermon. And the way that Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu was using was the waters of the Euphrates River. And all of the Muslim army was basically on those ships. So the people of Heerah ended up blocking the water that was flowing into the Euphrates River towards Hazrat Khalid bin Walid, and Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu was not able to travel through the water anymore. He did become worried, but he ended up putting together a small army that went to get that blockade opened up again. And the water started flowing in the river again. The ships were used to reach the people of Heerah. They were given those same conditions, right? They're like, either start giving your little tax, remain non-Muslim, or become Muslim, stop fighting, have a peace treaty, right? They decided to go into their 4 forts. They had 4 different forts, right? They went in them, they locked them up, and made sure that they were ready to fight against the Muslims. But as soon as the war started against the people of Heerah, they started realizing that they're losing the battle. So they automatically came out and said, we accept the condition of jizya. We have accepted that condition. So Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu accepted that from them, and they simply had to pay that jizya to the Muslims. But the Muslims even told them after that if they were not able to protect them, why do you pay jizya? So the Muslims can protect you. The Muslims are not able to do that, they won't even have to pay jizya.
The people of Heerah rebelled several times after this, no?
Yeah, and even violated the peace treaty twice.
That's absolutely true. Huzur did mention that the people of Heerah did end up going back and aligning with the Persians and rebelled against the Muslims, and they were given another peace treaty after that, and then even that one was violated. But the thing is, the Muslims ended up treating them very kindly. They were a people that were located in a place very, very important to the Muslims that was in central Iraq. And they were, well-off people. They were rich, they were established, they had their rich history as Christians. So the Muslims accepted it because at the end of the day, they were being pushed by the Persian Empire to fight the Muslims. So ultimately, when they decided to come back and come under Muslim rule, right, the Muslims accepted them. All they had to do was again pay the jizya. So they accepted Muslim rule, and while Muslim rule was slowly expanding in Iraq, the people in Persia were actually going through a very rough time.
What were those rough times exactly?
Well, we will learn about those rough times by expanding our vocabulary once more.
I knew we were almost at that part. So Murabi Sahib, what's the word?
Oh, it's a very, very popular word in its original language. Word is ikhtilaf.
Yep, I've heard that word multiple times, but unfortunately,
we don't know what it means.
Well, do not worry at all, because that's exactly why we have this trusted segment in our show. So Haris, you take it away with the word of the sermon.
Jazakallah Murabi Sahib. So the word ikhtilaf comes originally from Arabic, but used in Urdu, Farsi, and many other languages. Its basic meaning in English is disagreement or conflicting view. Disagreement in of itself is not a bad thing, but the condition is you should have a clean and pure mind. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said that disagreement in his own ummah is a mercy, because with the right intention, it pushes you to grow and learn more about the disagreement. But the ikhtilaf that happened in the Persian Empire was anything but mercy. After Emperor Ardashir was killed, they kept changing from leader to leader, and the government became very weak because they simply couldn't agree on anything. This proved to be a golden opportunity for the Muslims, and they took full advantage of it. Back to you guys.
So then what did Hazrat Khalid bin Walid Raziyallahu anhu do when he saw the Persian Empire facing these difficulties?
Wait, didn't he write a special message to their leaders?
Yes, that is absolutely correct, Monas. Hazrat Khalid bin Walid Raziyallahu anhu actually wrote a special message to the various leaders across the Persian Empire. And he started that message by saying that all praise is due to Allah, who has caused all of your order to fall into pieces, to become disorderly, and has weakened your government in this state. And he said that this is Allah's power, that He has done this to your empire, right? Because you faced the Muslims in this way and you opposed us. But at the same time, he told them that either be ready for war or simply accept Islam. But if you don't want to accept Islam, of course we can't force you. Simply accept your status with a peace treaty and give your jizya, which is due, right, to us, and we will stop fighting all our wars with you. But the Persians obviously were a very, very proud people, so they were not interested in submitting themselves to the Muslims, so they decided to continue fighting the war.
So no treaty and the fighting continued? What battle happened afterwards?
That is absolutely right, Tashif. Beloved Huzur, may Allah be his helper, mentioned that the next famous battle that happened between the Muslims and the Persians was the Battle of Anbaar. The Battle of Anbaar, the Muslims reached that fort. It was a single powerful fort. The people in the region of Anbaar closed that fort up. They got ready for battle, but there was something special. They had dug a very deep trench very close to the actual fort and had filled it up with water. It was so close that as soon as the Muslim tried to go over that water on ships to get close to the fort so they could climb up the walls, right, the people that were throwing arrows, shooting arrows from the palace, from the fort of Anbaar, did it so heavily that Muslims were forced to retreat and come back. So Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu realized that the people in Anbaar, in that fort, right, are not really so much skilled in their fighting because they're just protected very nicely. So he said what you should do is try to target the eyes of the soldiers. And so the Muslim archers, right, they shot arrows specifically towards the eyes of the enemy lines. And almost 1,000 soldiers that were non-Muslim, that were Persians, right, they ended up being brought down as a result. But it was still difficult to get into the palace. So Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu realized that the war is becoming longer, right? It's taking more and more lives, human lives, right? And the idea that was presented for that he followed, right, that he had, was get camels, as many as they had, get them slaughtered, right, and fill the water trench in its narrowest place, up to the top. And so they did that, they filled the water trench up, and finally they were able to get through to the actual fort. Afterwards, the Muslims very, very easily took over the fort and won. But the Persian leader that was there, his name was Shirazaz. Shirazaz requested that he wants to leave peacefully and go back to his leaders, right, in Persia. And Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu granted him that. And the shocking thing is, he never asked for anything to be brought with him, but Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu said that you can go and even take 3 days worth of food and provisions with you so that you have enough time to travel and go back to your leaders, your capital. So this shows how Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu was not just trying to cause mayhem and, kill people at all. When people deserved some mercy, he was absolutely ready to show it to them.
MashaAllah, Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu really made sure to avoid unnecessary bloodshed.
That is absolutely true, Monis, and Huzur mentioned this point, and it's very important. Huzur said many historians, right, people that write history, they have written bad things about Hazrat Khalid. They have falsely charged Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu as being someone that just wanted to go around and kill people. Whatever he took over in the town or a nation or a city, he ended up killing people in large numbers, right? But Huzur said this example here shows us very clearly that Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu, when people deserved mercy, when they were not being evil and violent, right, when they were peaceful, Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu was ready to forgive.
But Huzur did talk about more battles as well, right? Can we talk about those?
Oh, we'll talk about those battles, all right, but through our next amazing segment. For that, we go straight to the question of the sermon. All right, everyone, time once more for the question of the sermon, where, as you already know, what's coming your way as well as the panelists. So the question this week is, what was the name of the major battle that Huzur talked about that happened right after the Battle of Anbaar? You have 4 options, as you do every single week. Option number 1 is the Battle of Baghdad. Option number 2, the Battle of Firaz. Option number 3, Battle of Ubullah. And option number 4, the Battle of Ayn At Tamr. Time starts now. Time's up. Monis, what do you think?
I think it's number 4, Ayn At Tamr.
I also think it's number 4, Ayn At Tamr.
And number 4 was absolutely correct, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. So Murabbi Sahib, what exactly was this battle all about?
So this battle was something very, very interesting actually. What happened was, because Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu had taken over so many other places in Iraq already, he had established his name in that region. And people understood that when Khalid bin Walid was coming your way, then you knew a very powerful person's coming your way. So Huzoor mentioned that the next place that they were headed, of course, was the area of Ayn At Tamr. Something interesting happened there before the actual battle. There were both Arab non-Muslims there as well as Persian non-Muslims ready to fight the Muslims who were coming their way. The head of the non-Muslim Arabs was a person named Akka, and the head of the Persians who was going to be fighting the Muslims was named Mehran bin Bahzam. And Huzoor mentioned how they had a conversation. Both these people were going to fight the Muslims, they had a conversation. Akka told Mehran that these Arabs, right, we know how to fight them, as in these Muslims. So let us get into this fight. And Mehran said, yeah, you sure, you go ahead, we're going to cheer you on, you go fight them. But Mehran, when he came back from that conversation, his own Persian people told him, why did you just let Akka go forward trying to fight the Muslims, right? You know he's going to get destroyed. And Mehran said, yes, I know he's going to get destroyed, but we're going to get destroyed as well. So it's better that he just gets destroyed and the Muslims end up becoming weak as a result of fighting them, and we'll take the best that's left after that, right? And I already know that, they understood that, so they weren't even honest with each other in fighting the Muslims. And that's exactly what happened. When Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu's army reached, Akka's army, they completely destroyed them, they lost miserably. And because they were being a very treacherous army, right, Hazrat Khalid bin Walid was very harsh with them in that sense, right, because they were consistently fighting. And when it came to Mehran's army, they were equally destroyed, and the Persian soldiers that were fighting were also put to death because of that war that they were in, right? But we are missing something very, very important.
You're right. Next week is Jalsa Salana UK.
Absolutely, and lots of special things to watch on MTA.
Yes, you two are absolutely right. And beloved Huzoor, may Allah be his helper, at the end of this week's sermon specifically said that we should pray to Allah, that may Allah make this Jalsa an amazing success for the guests, for the workers, for the volunteers, and may this in general be a great success.
Ameen. So remember, you'll get a lot more knowledge by watching the full Friday sermon of beloved Huzoor.
So watch the full sermon and get back to us with the following critical message.
Did you enjoy this week's Friday Sermon for Kids? Want to know how you can make it even better? Tell us what you learned from beloved Huzoor's Friday sermon and send your questions and videos at FS4Kids@mta.tv. No later than every Sunday, and we'll try our best to include them in our next episode.
Now we can't include all the videos you sent to us, but you can see them all on our Instagram and Twitter at MTA Canada. Remember, at Friday Sermon for Kids, you're not just the audience, you make the show. See you next week.
Alright everybody, we are back once more with the review of the sermon and brand new stories. So pay close attention.
Huzoor began by presenting details of the Battle of Heerah, which took place in the 12th Hijri. The people of Heerah were mostly Arab Christians and had a Persian leader named Hakim. They stopped the Euphrates River to halt the Muslim army, but Hazrat Khalid radiallahu anhu himself opened it, reaching Heerah. Hakim ran away, but the Arab Christians fought against and lost during the battle. But they were treated kindly, given amnesty, and all they did was pay the jizya.
Then comes the Battle of Anbaar, which is not too far from Heerah. The people of Anbaar had a giant trench dug around their fort and filled with water. Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu planned and instructed his soldiers to attack the eyes of the soldiers, and almost 1,000 enemies were brought down. But the people of Anbaar were still fighting, so ultimately camels were slaughtered and the water trench filled. The Muslims reached the fort, won the Battle of Anbaar, and its leader, Shirazaz, was given a free pass to return to Persia.
The list continues, but before any major battle, Hazrat Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu wrote directly to the Persian leaders that they should either become Muslim or come in a peace treaty and pay the jizya. The Persians, of course, rejected the offer, and the next major battle was of Ayn At Tamr, where both Persian and Arab non-Muslim armies were waiting to fight Muslims, but both were defeated separately and their fighters all killed. And of course, we've just talked about 3 battles here. So to find out about all the other incredible battles,
make sure to watch the full Friday sermon.
Until next week,
Khuda Hafiz.
है शर्त तुमसे मुसलसल राबता रखना, मगर है शर्त तुम उससे मुसलसल राबता रखना, इमाम वक्त से एक रिश्ता इश्क वफा रखना, दिलों में प्यार की खुशबू तो होठों